Every morning in the bustling city of Lagos, Amara woke up before sunrise. While the streets outside were still quiet and the city lights flickered against the dark sky, she was already preparing breakfast, ironing clothes, cleaning the apartment, and getting everything ready before her husband, Daniel, woke up. For 12 years, she had followed the same routine. She never complained. She never asked for recognition. She simply did what she believed a loving wife should do. Daniel, however, had stopped seeing her efforts years ago. The moment he walked into the dining area that morning, he glanced at the food and frowned. Without even tasting it, he pushed the plate slightly away. "Is this all you could make?" he asked coldly. Amara looked up from the kitchen counter. "I used the ingredients we had left." "I thought." "You thought?" Daniel interrupted. "That's the problem. You think too much and achieve too little." The words hit her like stones. Their 16-year-old daughter, Zara, lowered her eyes. She hated hearing her father speak to her mother that way, but she had become used to it. Daniel continued. "Look at other women. They run businesses. They make money. They contribute something useful. What do you do all day?" Amara forced a smile. "I take care of the family." Daniel laughed. "Anyone can do that." The room became silent. For years, Daniel had repeated the same message. He made sure Amara never forgot it. According to him, she was ordinary, average, replaceable. Whenever relatives visited, he joked about her lack of achievements. Whenever friends came over, he compared her to successful women. Whenever his coworkers mentioned promotions, he would glance at Amara and shake his head as if she were the biggest disappointment of his life. Yet nobody knew that every insult cut deeper than the last. Because Amara wasn't weak. She was hiding something. Something she had spent years building in complete silence. And one day, the man who mocked her would wish he had never spoken those words. What Daniel didn't know was that every insult fueled something inside Amara. Years earlier, when Daniel first started mocking her, she had cried herself to sleep night after night. She had questioned her worth. She had wondered whether he was right. Then one evening, after everyone had gone to bed, she made a decision. If nobody believed in her, she would believe in herself. She began learning online business skills using an old laptop that barely worked. After finishing all her household responsibilities, she stayed awake until 2 or 3 in the morning watching tutorials, studying marketing, learning customer service, and understanding how businesses grew. At first, she failed repeatedly. Products didn't sell. Customers disappeared. Ideas collapsed. But she never stopped. Every failure taught her something new. Within 2 years, she launched a small online business selling handmade luxury accessories. The profits were tiny at first. Some months she earned almost nothing. But instead of spending the money, she saved every dollar. Every single dollar. Daniel never noticed. Whenever deliveries arrived, she told him they were household supplies. Whenever she worked on her laptop, she said she was chatting with relatives. Whenever money entered her account, she transferred it into private investment funds. Slowly, the numbers began growing. A few $100s became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. Then her business expanded beyond Nigeria. Customers from other countries started ordering. Partnerships formed. Revenue increased dramatically. By the time Daniel's insults became a daily routine, Amara's business was already generating more income than his corporate job. Yet she remained silent. Not because she was afraid. Because she was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for life to reveal who people truly were. And every day, Daniel unknowingly moved closer to that moment. A month later, Daniel received a promotion at work. He immediately organized a celebration party at their apartment. Friends, Relatives, co-workers, and neighbors filled the luxurious living room. Music played. Food was served. Laughter echoed through the apartment. Daniel walked around proudly greeting everyone. The promotion had increased his salary significantly, and he acted as though he had become one of the most successful men in Lagos overnight. Near the end of the evening, one of his co-workers smiled at Amara. "Daniel is lucky to have such a supportive wife." The statement should have been simple. Instead, Daniel laughed loudly. "Lucky," he said. The room turned toward him. "My wife is a good person, but let's be honest. She contributes nothing financially." Several guests looked uncomfortable. Amara remained silent. Daniel continued. "If I stopped working tomorrow, we'd be finished. Everything this family has exists because of me." The words hung in the air. Some guests nodded awkwardly. Others avoided eye contact. Zara clenched her fist beneath the table. She wanted to defend her mother. But Amara gently touched her arm. "Don't." The party continued, but something had changed. A few guests noticed the sadness in Amara's eyes. Others noticed how calmly she accepted humiliation. Nobody understood why. Because nobody knew the truth. Not even Daniel. The man who claimed to be carrying the entire family was standing only a few feet away from a woman whose hidden wealth had already surpassed everything he owned. 3 days after the party, an expensive black luxury vehicle stopped outside the apartment building. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. A professionally dressed woman emerged carrying a leather briefcase. Security guards greeted her respectfully. She entered the building and headed directly toward Amara's apartment. When Daniel opened the door, he looked confused. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled politely. "I'm looking for Mrs. Amara Okafor." Daniel blinked. "Why?" "I have business documents requiring her signature." Daniel laughed. "You must have the wrong person." At that moment, Amara appeared behind him. The visitor immediately smiled. "Mrs. Okafor. Good afternoon." Amara nodded. "Please come in." Daniel's confusion deepened. The two women sat together in the dining room discussing contracts, expansion opportunities, international investors, and upcoming financial meetings. Daniel listened from a distance. He couldn't understand most of what they were saying. Investor. Acquisition. Revenue. Partnership. Expansion. The conversation sounded like something from a major corporation. Not from his wife. When the visitor finally left, Daniel asked a simple question. "Who was that?" Amara smiled. "A business associate." Daniel laughed. "What business?" For a brief second, Amara looked directly into his eyes. Then she simply replied, "You wouldn't be interested." And she walked away. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something unfamiliar. Unease. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. For years, he had been certain he understood his wife completely. Now he wasn't so sure. Questions filled his mind. Why would investors visit her? Why did she need contracts? Why had she never mentioned any business? The next morning, curiosity became suspicion. Suspicion became obsession. For the first time in 12 years, Daniel began paying attention to his wife. He noticed frequent business calls. He noticed emails arriving constantly. He noticed meetings on her calendar. He noticed that she never seemed worried about money. The more he observed, the more confused he became. Then, late one evening, while Amara was in another room, a notification flashed briefly across her phone screen. Daniel wasn't trying to look. But one number instantly caught his attention. The balance displayed on the screen appeared impossible. His heart nearly stopped. Surely he had read it wrong. No ordinary account could contain that much money. No homemaker could possess that kind of wealth. No woman he had mocked for years could secretly be worth millions. Yet the number had been real. And in that moment, Daniel unknowingly took the first step toward discovering a truth that would shatter his entire world. Daniel sat alone in the living room long after midnight. The image of that bank notification refused to leave his mind. He had only seen it for a second, but the number burned itself into his memory. It wasn't thousands. It wasn't even hundreds of thousands. It looked like millions. For years, Daniel had believed he controlled the family's financial future. He paid the bills. He made the major purchases. He decided where money went and how it was spent. That belief gave him power, and over time, he began treating that power like proof of superiority. Now, for the first time, doubt was creeping into his mind. The next morning, he watched Amara carefully. She moved through the apartment as calmly as always. She prepared breakfast. She watered the plants near the balcony. She checked a few messages on her phone. Nothing seemed unusual. But Daniel's perspective had changed. Every small action suddenly looked suspicious. When she smiled while reading an email, he wondered who had sent it. When she received a phone call, he wondered what business they were discussing. When she left the apartment for a meeting, he secretly followed her car. The destination shocked him. Instead of going to a supermarket, salon, or friend's house, Amara entered a modern office tower located in one of the city's most expensive business districts. Daniel sat frozen behind the steering wheel. Luxury vehicles filled the parking area. Executives in expensive suits walked through the entrance. This wasn't a place ordinary people visited. And yet his wife walked inside like she belonged there. For nearly 2 hours he waited. When she finally emerged, she was accompanied by several professionally dressed executives who appeared to be treating her with unusual respect. One of them even opened a car door for her. Daniel couldn't believe what he was seeing. His wife, the woman he called useless every day, was being treated like an important business leader. As she drove away, fear replaced confusion. Because deep down, Daniel was beginning to realize something terrifying. He might not know his wife at all. Daniel's obsession grew stronger with each passing day. While Amara slept, he searched through public business records online. At first, he found nothing. Then, shortly after midnight, he discovered a company name that seemed familiar. The company specialized in luxury lifestyle products and international distribution. Its revenue figures were astonishing. Annual profits reached levels Daniel had only seen in business magazines. The company was expanding into multiple countries and attracting major investors. As he continued reading, his hands began shaking. Near the bottom of the page was the founder's name. Amara Okafor. Daniel stared at the screen. His chest tightened. This couldn't be possible. He refreshed the page. The name remained. He checked again. Still there. For several minutes he simply sat in silence. Every insult he had ever spoken suddenly replayed inside his head. Every joke. Every humiliation. Every cruel comment. The realization hit him harder than anything he had experienced before. While he was busy criticizing her, Amara had quietly built an empire. Not a small side business. Not a hobby. An empire. A company worth millions. A company larger than the organization where he worked. A company that employed hundreds of people. Daniel leaned back in his chair. For 12 years he had acted like the successful one. For 12 years he had treated Amara like she depended on him. Now the truth stood before him. He wasn't the provider he believed himself to be. In reality, the wealthiest person in the family had been sitting across from him at the dinner table every night. And she had never once used it to make him feel small. A week later, Daniel made a decision he would later regret. He secretly attended one of Amara's public investor presentations. The event was held in a luxury hotel ballroom. Business leaders, investors, journalists, and entrepreneurs filled the room. Daniel sat near the back wearing sunglasses and a cap, hoping nobody would recognize him. Then Amara walked onto the stage. The audience immediately applauded. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The woman standing confidently before hundreds of people looked completely different from the quiet wife he knew at home. She spoke with authority. She spoke with confidence. She spoke like a leader. Charts appeared on giant screens. Revenue growth. International expansion. New partnerships. Future acquisitions. Every slide revealed greater success. The audience listened attentively. Investors nodded. Journalists took notes. Several times the crowd applauded. Daniel couldn't remember the last time anyone applauded him. By the end of the presentation, people lined up to speak with Amara. Some wanted investment opportunities. Others wanted partnerships. Many simply wanted a photograph. Daniel remained seated. His world felt upside down. For years he had measured success by titles and salaries. Now he was watching his wife command a room full of powerful people. And the most painful part wasn't her success. The most painful part was realizing she had achieved everything without his support. That evening Daniel confronted Zara. "Did you know about your mother's business?" Zara looked at him quietly. For several seconds she didn't answer. Then she nodded. Daniel froze. "You knew?" "Yes." "For how long?" "Years." The answer hit him like a punch. "Years." Zara looked directly at her father. "Mom never wanted anyone to know." "Why?" Zara hesitated. Then she spoke words Daniel would never forget. "Because she didn't want people to think she was successful just because of money." Daniel remained silent. Zara continued. "You always measured people by what they earned." The room felt smaller. "You called her useless." Daniel looked away. "You embarrassed her." Daniel said nothing. "You made her feel invisible." Each sentence felt heavier than the last. "But she never hated you." Daniel's eyes widened. "Even when you insulted her, she still defended you." The realization hurt more than anger ever could. For the first time in years, Daniel saw himself through someone else's eyes. And he didn't like what he saw. 2 days later, fate delivered the final blow. Amara was reviewing financial documents in her home office. She stepped away briefly to answer a phone call. A document remained open on her computer. Daniel wasn't planning to look. But curiosity won. He glanced at the screen. Then froze. His heart nearly stopped. The financial statement displayed multiple accounts. Investment portfolios. Business assets. Real estate holdings. International funds. The total net worth appeared at the bottom. Daniel stared at the figure. He checked it again. And again. The amount exceeded everything he owned by an unimaginable margin. His salary. His savings. His investments. His retirement account. Combined, they represented only a tiny fraction of Amara's wealth. The room suddenly felt cold. For years he had mocked the woman sitting beside him. For years he had treated her like a burden. For years he believed she needed him. Now one brutal truth stood before him. If anyone had been carrying the family all along, it had been Amara. And Daniel finally understood something terrifying. The real danger wasn't losing access to her money. The real danger was that after everything he had done, he might be losing her. After discovering the true extent of Amara's wealth, Daniel became a different man almost overnight. The criticism stopped. The insults disappeared. The sarcastic jokes vanished. For the first time in years, he complimented her cooking. He started helping around the apartment. He brought flowers home. He asked about her day. To an outsider, it might have looked like a husband finally appreciating his wife. But Amara noticed something immediately. The timing. For 12 years Daniel had ignored her feelings. For 12 years he had treated her achievements as worthless. Now, only after learning she was wealthy, he suddenly became kind. One evening he arrived home carrying an expensive bouquet of roses. "I saw these and thought of you," he said. Amara accepted the flowers politely. "Thank you." Daniel waited for a smile. Instead, she simply placed them in a vase and continued reading. The reaction disappointed him. He expected gratitude. He expected warmth. He expected the old Amara. But something had changed. Not in him. In her. Years of humiliation had quietly transformed her. The woman who once begged for approval no longer needed it. That realization frightened Daniel. Because he was beginning to understand a painful truth. Love neglected for years cannot always be repaired with flowers. Some wounds run too deep. And some apologies arrive too late. A week later Daniel reserved a table at one of the city's most luxurious restaurants. The restaurant overlooked a sparkling skyline. Soft music filled the air. The atmosphere was perfect. At least that was what Daniel hoped. Throughout dinner he tried to impress Amara. He spoke about their future. Their family. Their dreams. The vacations they could take. The things they could accomplish together. Amara listened quietly. When he finished speaking, she placed her glass down gently. "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course." Her eyes met his. "If I was still the woman you thought I was 2 months ago, would we be sitting here tonight?" Daniel froze. The question cut straight through every excuse he had prepared. He tried to answer. But no words came. Amara continued. "If you never discovered the business." Silence. "If you never saw the money." More silence. "If you still believed I was worthless." Daniel lowered his eyes. Amara's voice remained calm. Would anything have changed? The restaurant suddenly felt quiet despite being full of people. For the first time, Daniel couldn't hide behind explanations. Because they both knew the answer. No. Nothing would have changed. The realization hung between them like a wall. And Daniel finally understood why his apologies weren't working. He wasn't fighting against one argument. He was fighting against 12 years of memories. Several days later Amara handed Daniel a small notebook. "I think you should read this." Daniel looked confused. "What is it?" "My journal." His heart tightened. That night he sat alone in his study and opened the first page. The entries stretched back over a decade. Page after page revealed moments he barely remembered. But Amara remembered all of them. The day he laughed at her business idea. The day he called her a burden in front of relatives. The day he compared her to another woman. The day he told Zora that her mother had never achieved anything important. The day he said she was lucky to have him. Each memory was accompanied by Amara's thoughts. Her pain. Her disappointment. Her loneliness. Daniel continued reading. Tears slowly filled his eyes. One entry hit harder than all the others. It had been written 6 years earlier. Today Daniel said nobody would ever respect me because I have done nothing with my life. I smiled and pretended it didn't hurt. But tonight I cried in the bathroom so Zora wouldn't hear me. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything is okay. Daniel stopped reading. His hands shook. For years he believed words disappeared after being spoken. Now he realized they never truly disappear. They remain inside people. Growing heavier. Growing deeper. Until one day they become impossible to forget. And as Daniel turned each page, he came face to face with the man he used to be. The man he never wanted to see again. A month later, Daniel's extended family gathered for a celebration. Years earlier, these were the same relatives who laughed at Amara whenever Daniel mocked her. Now the atmosphere felt completely different. Everyone knew about her success. Everyone wanted her attention. Everyone wanted photographs. Everyone wanted business advice. The same people who once ignored her suddenly treated her like a celebrity. Amara remained polite. But Daniel noticed something. She never forgot. Not out of bitterness. Out of awareness. At one point an uncle approached Daniel. "You are lucky your wife became successful." Daniel forced a smile. Then something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, he defended her publicly. "No." The room grew quiet. "I'm lucky she stayed." Several relatives looked surprised. Daniel continued. "I spent years disrespecting her." Silence filled the room. "I treated her achievements like they didn't matter." Nobody spoke. "And if she ever decides to leave me," his voice cracked slightly, "I wouldn't blame her." The honesty shocked everyone, including Amara. For the first time she saw genuine regret in his eyes. Not regret over money. Not regret over status. Regret over how he had treated another human being. Late one evening, Amara sat alone on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The wind moved gently through her hair. For years she had dreamed of this moment. Financial freedom. Independence. Success. She had achieved everything she once thought impossible. Yet her heart felt strangely heavy. Daniel joined her quietly. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally he broke the silence. "I know saying sorry isn't enough." Amara stared at the city. "No. I know I hurt you." "Yes. I know I don't deserve another chance." Amara remained silent. Daniel looked down. Then he said something he had never said before. "If you decide to leave, I will understand." Those words surprised her. Because for years Daniel always tried to control outcomes. Now he was surrendering control completely. For the first time, he wasn't demanding forgiveness. He wasn't asking for anything. He was simply accepting responsibility. Amara turned toward him. For several seconds neither spoke. Then she asked a question that would determine the future of their marriage. "Daniel, if I had never become rich, would you still be standing here?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Because he finally knew the answer. And he knew she deserved the truth. The future of their family now depended on what he would say next. The question hung heavily in the cool night air. "Daniel, if I had never become rich, would you still be standing here?" Daniel looked down at the city lights below. For years he had hidden behind pride, excuses, and arrogance. Every time he hurt Amara, he convinced himself he was justified. Every insult became easier than admitting his own flaws. But now there was nowhere left to hide. His voice trembled. "No." Amara remained silent. Daniel continued. "If you had asked me that question 3 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, the answer would have been no." The honesty hurt. But it was the truth. "I thought success made me better than other people." His eyes filled with tears. "I thought money gave me value." Amara listened quietly. "I looked at your kindness and saw weakness." His voice cracked. "I looked at your patience and saw failure." A tear rolled down his face. "And while I was busy judging you, you were becoming someone extraordinary." For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't trying to defend himself. He wasn't trying to minimize his mistakes. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was simply telling the truth. Amara looked at him carefully. People often apologized when they were caught. But very few accepted responsibility without conditions. For several minutes neither spoke. Then Daniel said something unexpected. "I don't want your money." Amara raised an eyebrow. "I don't want your company." The city lights reflected in his eyes. "I don't want your success." His voice became quieter. "I just wish I had appreciated you before I knew about any of it." For the first time since discovering her secret, Daniel wasn't talking about wealth. He was talking about her. And that mattered more than he realized. 3 weeks later, disaster struck. Amara was in the middle of an executive meeting when urgent messages began flooding her phone. A major international partner had suddenly withdrawn from a multi-million-dollar agreement. Within hours, financial news outlets began reporting concerns about the future of the project. Investors became nervous. Markets reacted. Employees started asking questions. The company's biggest expansion plan was suddenly in danger. For years Amara had overcome every challenge. But this situation was different. Thousands of jobs depended on the decision. Millions of dollars were at risk. Entire departments waited for answers. As pressure mounted, Amara worked around the clock. She slept less than 3 hours each night. Meetings lasted until dawn. Stress slowly began affecting her health. One evening she returned home exhausted. For the first time in years, Daniel saw her vulnerable. Not as a successful entrepreneur. Not as a millionaire. Not as the woman everyone admired. Just as a tired human being carrying an impossible burden. Without saying a word, he brought her dinner. Then coffee. Then organized her documents. Then handled small tasks around the house. Amara noticed. He wasn't doing it for recognition. He wasn't doing it because someone was watching. He wasn't doing it because he wanted something. He was simply helping. Day after day. Night after night. The crisis continued. And for the first time in their marriage, Daniel became the support system Amara had always needed. The pressure eventually became too much. During an important board meeting, Amara suddenly felt dizzy. The room began spinning. Voices became distant. Then everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, she was in a hospital room. Machines beeped softly nearby. Doctors explained that extreme exhaustion and stress had pushed her body beyond its limits. She needed rest. Complete rest. When the doctors left, Amara looked toward the chair beside her bed. Daniel was asleep. Still wearing yesterday's clothes. Still holding her hand. He had apparently refused to leave. Hours later, she woke again. Daniel was still there. The next morning. Still there. 3 days later. Still there. He attended business calls on her behalf. He coordinated with executives. He updated family members. He managed everything possible while remaining at her side. One afternoon Amara watched him sleeping in the chair. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His posture looked uncomfortable. Yet he never complained. And something unexpected happened. For the first time in many years, she saw the man she had originally fallen in love with. Not the arrogant husband. Not the critical husband. The young man who once promised to stand beside her through every challenge. The man she thought had disappeared forever. Perhaps he had been buried beneath pride. Perhaps he had been lost. Or perhaps he had finally found his way back. A month later, Amara returned to work. But another challenge awaited. Several investors wanted her removed from leadership. They argued that recent losses proved she was no longer capable of leading the company. The boardroom meeting became tense. Executives debated. Investors demanded change. Some people who once praised her success now questioned her ability. Amara remained calm. But Daniel sat quietly at the back of the room watching everything unfold. Then one investor made a comment that instantly changed the atmosphere. Perhaps her success has been exaggerated. The room fell silent. Daniel stood. Everyone turned toward him. For years he had publicly humiliated Amara. Now he spoke publicly in her defense. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The room remained silent. "I watched this woman build a company from nothing." His voice grew stronger. "I watched her work while everyone doubted her." Several executives nodded. "I watched her create opportunities for people who never had any." Daniel looked around the room. "And if this company exists today, it's because she refused to quit when everyone else would have." Nobody interrupted. Because everyone could hear the sincerity in his voice. For the first time in years, Daniel used his words to protect rather than destroy. And Amara noticed. A few days later, Amara found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten letter. Not a text message. Not an email. A letter. She opened it slowly. The pages contained memories. Regrets. Confessions. Daniel described every mistake he could remember. Every insult. Every cruel joke. Every moment he failed her. But one paragraph stood out. "If you never forgive me, I will understand. If you never trust me the same way again, I will understand. But I need you to know something. The greatest mistake of my life was not failing to recognize your success. It was failing to recognize your value before the success arrived." Amara read the sentence several times. Then she continued reading. The letter ended with a simple promise. "Whether we stay together or not, I will spend the rest of my life becoming a better man than the one who hurt you." For a long time she sat quietly. Then she folded the letter. And for the first time in many months, she smiled. Not because everything had been fixed. Not because the pain had disappeared. But because genuine change had finally begun. 6 months after the crisis, Amara's company organized its largest annual celebration. The event was held in one of the most prestigious convention centers in Lagos. Business leaders arrived from different countries. Government officials attended. Investors, journalists, entrepreneurs, and hundreds of employees filled the massive hall. For many people, the evening was meant to celebrate the company's incredible growth. For Amara, however, it meant something else. A decision. A decision she had spent months thinking about. Backstage, she stood quietly looking at the audience through a small opening in the curtain. Daniel sat near the front row beside Sarah. He had no idea what was about to happen. Neither did anyone else. As the program began, speakers took turns praising the company's achievements. They spoke about revenue, expansion, innovation, leadership. Then Amara's name was announced. The audience immediately rose to their feet. Thunderous applause filled the hall. Daniel joined everyone else. As he watched his wife walk confidently toward the stage, he felt proud. Not of her wealth. Not of her success. Of her strength. Because he knew the journey behind the applause. He knew about the sleepless nights. The sacrifices. The tears. The loneliness. The years she spent building something extraordinary while receiving almost no support from the person who should have supported her most. The applause continued for nearly a minute. Then silence filled the room. Amara stepped toward the microphone and began a speech nobody would ever forget. Amara smiled warmly at the audience. Then she began sharing her story. She spoke about failure. She spoke about perseverance. She spoke about self-belief. The audience listened attentively. Then her speech took an unexpected turn. Many people see success and assume the journey was easy. The room became quieter. They see the destination but not the road. Several people nodded. For many years, I doubted myself. Daniel lowered his eyes. I allowed other people's opinions to define my worth. Silence spread through the hall. I believed I wasn't good enough. The audience listened carefully. Then Amara said something nobody expected. The person who made me question myself most. She paused. Was someone I loved. Daniel's heart stopped. The room remained completely silent. But before anyone could react, Amara continued. He told me I wasn't successful. A painful smile crossed her face. He told me I wasn't valuable. Several audience members looked uncomfortable. He told me I hadn't achieved anything. Daniel felt tears forming. Then Amara surprised everyone. Today I want to thank him. The audience looked confused. Including Daniel. Because every insult forced me to discover strength I didn't know I had. The room remained silent. And because people can change. Now everyone was listening. Sometimes growth begins with failure. Her eyes moved toward Daniel. Sometimes the person who hurts you most becomes the person who learns the most. Daniel could no longer hold back his tears. For the first time in his life, someone had shown him grace he didn't deserve. Near the end of the ceremony, a surprise announcement appeared on giant screens. The audience assumed another business award was coming. Instead, a video began playing. Photographs from Amara's life appeared. Her early struggles. Her small apartment. Her first products. Her first customers. Her growing company. Then new images appeared. Images nobody expected. Pictures of Zora. Family memories. Old moments. Personal sacrifices. The audience slowly realized something. The presentation wasn't about business success. It was about character. When the video ended, Amara returned to the stage. She held a small box. Then she looked directly at Daniel. The entire room followed her gaze. Daniel looked confused. Amara smiled. For years I waited for recognition from the wrong people. The audience remained silent. Today I want to recognize someone else. Daniel's eyes widened. She opened the box. Inside was a custom-made award. Engraved on the front were simple words. For choosing growth over pride. The room became silent. Then Amara called Daniel onto the stage. He hesitated. The audience began applauding. Slowly he walked forward. By the time he reached the stage, tears covered his face. Because he knew exactly how undeserving he felt. Yet somehow, Amara was choosing forgiveness over revenge. After the event ended, Daniel and Amara found themselves standing alone outside the convention center. The city lights shimmered across the night skyline. For a while neither spoke. Finally Daniel broke the silence. You didn't have to do that. Amara smiled. Yes, I did. Daniel looked confused. Why? She thought carefully before answering. Because carrying anger became too heavy. The wind moved gently around them. I spent years proving my worth. She looked toward the city. But eventually I realized something. Daniel listened. My success wasn't the victory. What was? Amara smiled. Finding peace. Daniel remained silent. Then came the question he had feared for months. Are you leaving me? For several seconds Amara said nothing. Then she stepped closer. I almost did. Daniel's heart sank. But people are not defined by their worst mistakes. A tear rolled down his face. They are defined by what they choose to become afterward. The words hit him harder than anything else. Because she wasn't excusing his behavior. She wasn't pretending the past never happened. She was acknowledging the truth while allowing space for growth. And that made her forgiveness even more powerful. 1 year later, life looked very different. Amara's company continued growing. Daniel had left his old job and started mentoring young professionals about leadership, humility, and personal growth. Their relationship wasn't perfect. No relationship is. But it was honest. Respect had replaced arrogance. Communication had replaced criticism. Partnership had replaced control. One evening the family sat together on the balcony overlooking the city. Zora laughed while sharing stories from university. Amara smiled. Daniel watched them both quietly. Then he looked at the woman he had nearly lost. The woman he once underestimated. The woman whose value had never depended on money. And he finally understood the lesson that changed his life. The greatest wealth a person can possess is not found in a bank account. It is found in character. Money can reveal success. But character reveals worth. For years Daniel had confused the two. And it almost cost him everything. As the city lights sparkled beneath the night sky, he reached for Amara's hand. This time, she held it. And for the first time in many years, both of them felt truly rich.